It's a great conversation piece, isn't it? What do you do for a living? I work at Buckingham Palace.
They thought working for the Queen would be a dream. They were wrong. Royal maids are fleeing Buckingham Palace, and what forced them out will shock you to your core. A Christmas party turned violent. A maid was arrested. Wages so low, the public couldn't believe it. But that's just the beginning. What they discovered behind those palace walls is absolutely horrifying. From forbidden items you use every day to secrets the royals desperately tried to hide, the truth is finally coming out. You won't believe what really goes on inside Buckingham Palace. For most people, Buckingham Palace represents the very height of British royalty. The grand building with its famous balcony, ornate gates, and perfectly maintained grounds has been photographed millions of times. Tourists from around the world gather outside its walls, hoping to catch a glimpse of the changing of the guard, or perhaps even a member of the royal family. But while the public sees the polished exterior and the carefully managed public events, very few people understand what actually happens inside those historic walls on a daily basis. The palace is not just a royal residence or a tourist attraction. It is also a workplace for hundreds of staff members who keep the building running smoothly. These employees work behind the scenes, mostly invisible to the public eye, maintaining the standards that have been established over centuries. Among these workers are the housekeeping staff, the maids who are responsible for cleaning and maintaining one of the most famous buildings in the world. Their work is essential, yet it rarely gets public attention. When it does, the stories that emerge can be quite surprising. Anne Simmons spent more than 10 years working as a maid at Buckingham Palace. During that time, she was responsible for helping to maintain the palace's 775 rooms. That number alone gives some idea of the scale of the operation. Each of these rooms requires regular attention, and many of them contain valuable historical items, delicate fabrics, and furniture that must be handled with extreme care. According to Simmons, working at the palace was nothing like working in an ordinary household or even in a luxury hotel. The expectations were different, the rules were stricter, and the pressure was constant. Simmons has spoken publicly about her experiences, offering a rare look into what life is really like for the staff who work in this iconic building. Her accounts reveal that behind the glittering chandeliers and polished marble floors, there exists a world governed by strict protocols and demanding standards. For the cleaning staff, every single task matters. A mop is not just a mop, and a cloth is not just a cloth. Each tool has a specific purpose, and each action must be performed according to precise procedures that have been developed and refined over many years. The palace operates on a level of organization that most people would find hard to imagine. Every detail is planned, every movement has a purpose, and nothing is left to chance. The staff members who work there are expected to understand this system and to operate within it flawlessly. This means that even tasks that might seem simple in another setting become complex when performed at Buckingham Palace. Mopping a floor, for example, is not just about making the surface clean. The mop must be prepared correctly, the water must be at the right temperature. The cleaning solution must be mixed according to specific guidelines, and the mopping technique itself must follow established procedures. According to Simmons, this level of precision applies to everything. Cleaning clothes must be folded in a particular way. Windows must be cleaned using specific motions. Furniture must be dusted in a certain order. These are not suggestions or preferences. They are requirements, and staff members are expected to follow them without exception. The reasoning behind these strict procedures is not arbitrary. Many of the items in the palace are extremely valuable both financially and historically. A careless action could potentially damage something irreplaceable. Even something as seemingly harmless as using the wrong type of cloth could scratch a surface or leave residue that would be difficult to remove. But the pressure goes beyond just the physical requirements of the job. The staff at Buckingham Palace work in an environment where they are constantly aware that their actions might be observed. A member of the royal family might walk through a room they have just cleaned. A high-ranking official might notice if something is not quite right. Visitors on official tours will see the results of their work. This creates a situation where the staff cannot afford to have an off day. Every day must meet the same high standard, regardless of how tired they might be or what challenges they might be facing in their personal lives. Simmons described this constant awareness as one of the most difficult aspects of the job. In a normal workplace, employees might have some privacy or at least some moments when they are not being watched. At the palace, that sense of privacy essentially does not exist. The staff members know that their work is always subject to scrutiny, and this knowledge affects how they approach every task. It creates a mindset where vigilance becomes automatic, where checking and double-checking becomes second nature, and where the fear of making a mistake is always present in the background. The environment also demands a specific type of discipline. Staff members cannot simply decide to do things their own way, even if they believe their method might be more efficient. The palace has its traditions and its established ways of doing things, and these must be respected. This can be challenging for employees who might have years of experience in housekeeping or cleaning. They might know of products or techniques that work well in other settings, but if those methods are not approved for use at Buckingham Palace, they cannot use them. The individual must adapt to the system, not the other way around. What Simmons revealed through her interviews and public statements is that working at Buckingham Palace requires much more than just knowing how to clean. It requires patience, attention to detail, physical stamina, and mental resilience. The hours can be long, the work can be physically demanding, and the pressure is relentless. Staff members must balance the need to work quickly with the requirement to work perfectly. They must be efficient without cutting corners. They must be thorough without taking too much time. The palace itself contributes to this pressure. Walking through its grand halls, surrounded by centuries of history and priceless art, the staff cannot help but feel the weight of the responsibility they carry. They are not just cleaning a building, they are helping to maintain a piece of British heritage, a symbol of the monarchy, and a tourist attraction that millions of people want to see in perfect condition. Every polished surface, every dust-free corner, every perfectly arranged item contributes to the overall impression that visitors and residents have of the palace. For the maids who work in this environment, the job becomes more than just employment. It becomes a test of their ability to perform under pressure, to maintain standards even when exhausted, and to take pride in work that often goes unnoticed. When everything is done correctly, no one comments because perfection is expected. It is only when something goes wrong that attention is drawn to the work of the cleaning staff. Simmons painted a picture of a workplace where the normal rules do not quite apply. The grandeur and the history create an atmosphere that is unique. The constant presence of tradition and protocol shapes every interaction and every task. For those who work there, Buckingham Palace is not just a building, it is an institution, with its own culture, its own expectations, and its own way of doing things. Understanding and adapting to this culture is essential for anyone who wants to work there successfully. But as Simmons' experiences demonstrate, adapting to that culture and meeting those expectations comes at a cost. The pressure is real, the demands are high, and not everyone can sustain that level of intensity indefinitely. When Anne Simmons began revealing details about her time working at Buckingham Palace, one of the most surprising aspects for many people was learning about the specific items that were completely banned from massage. These were not exotic or unusual products. In many cases, they were everyday cleaning supplies that millions of people use in their own homes without a second thought. But at Buckingham Palace, even the most ordinary cleaning item could be prohibited if it did not meet the strict standards that governed every aspect of housekeeping. Perhaps the most unexpected banned item was the disposable wet wipe. In recent years, these products have become incredibly popular in households across the United Kingdom and around the world. They are marketed as convenient, effective, and in many cases, flushable. Parents use them for children, people keep them in their cars and bags, and they have become a standard cleaning product in many homes. But according to Simmons, wet wipes were absolutely forbidden at Buckingham Palace. Staff members were not permitted to use them under any circumstances, and this rule was taken very seriously. The ban on wet wipes was not simply about preference or tradition. There were concrete, practical reasons behind this decision. Despite being labelled as flushable by manufacturers, wet wipes have been known to cause significant problems in plumbing systems. Unlike toilet paper, which breaks down relatively quickly when exposed to water, wet wipes tend to remain intact. When flushed down toilets, they can accumulate in pipes, creating blockages that require expensive repairs. For a building as old and as large as Buckingham Palace, with its complex network of historic plumbing, such blockages could be particularly problematic. The issue was reportedly one that King Charles himself took seriously. According to reports from palace staff, the environmental impact of disposable wet wipes was a concern that aligned with broader sustainability efforts within the royal household. Single-use products, in general, were being reconsidered as part of a move toward more environmentally responsible practices. The palace, despite its historic traditions, was apparently making efforts to reduce waste and to choose products that would have less environmental impact over the long term. Instead of wet wipes, the cleaning staff at Buckingham Palace used reusable clothes. These clothes could be washed and used repeatedly, which reduced waste significantly. They were also gentler on the delicate surfaces found throughout the palace. According to Simmons, the staff became very skilled at using these reusable cloths effectively. Different types of clothes were designated for different purposes, and staff members learned which cloth was appropriate for which task. This system required more effort than simply pulling a wet wipe from a package, but it was considered more suitable for the palace environment. Steel wool was another common cleaning product that was strictly banned. In many households and commercial settings, steel wool is valued for its ability to scrub away stubborn stains and buildup. It's particularly popular for cleaning pots, pans, and ovens. However, at Buckingham Palace, steel wool was considered too harsh and too risky to use. The reason for this ban was the potential for damage to the palace's many delicate surfaces. Buckingham Palace contains an enormous variety of materials. There are marble floors, granite countertops, polished wood furniture, delicate fabrics, precious metals, and countless other surfaces that require careful handling. Steel wool, despite its effectiveness at removing tough stains, has a significant drawback. It is abrasive by nature, and it can easily scratch surfaces that are not designed to withstand such treatment. A scratch on a marble floor or a polished countertop might seem minor, but in the context of maintaining a historic building, such damage is unacceptable. Once a surface is scratched, the damage is often permanent or requires expensive restoration work. Instead of steel wool, the palace cleaning staff relied on microfiber cloth. These clothes have become increasingly popular in professional cleaning settings because they are effective at picking up dirt and grime while being gentle on surfaces. Microfiber works by trapping particles within its tiny fibers rather than simply pushing dirt around. This makes it possible to clean thoroughly without applying excessive pressure or using harsh scrubbing motions. For the staff at Buckingham Palace, mastering the use of microfiber cloth was an essential skill. The cleaning solutions used at the palace were also carefully controlled. Rather than using commercial cleaning products purchased from stores, the staff often prepared their own solutions using natural ingredients. Vinegar, lemon juice, and warm water were among the primary components. These simple ingredients might sound basic, but when mixed correctly and used properly, they can be remarkably effective at cleaning a wide variety of surfaces. Vinegar, for instance, is naturally acidic, which makes it useful for cutting through grease and removing mineral deposits. Lemon juice also has acidic properties, and it provides a fresh scent that many people find pleasant. When combined with warm water in the correct proportions, these ingredients create cleaning solutions that are effective without being harsh. They do not leave chemical residues, they do not produce strong fumes, and they are generally safe for use on delicate materials. According to Simmons, the preparation of these cleaning solutions was not left to chance. There were specific formulas that staff members were expected to follow. The proportions had to be correct, and the solutions had to be mixed fresh as needed. This approach required more time and effort than simply spraying a commercial product from a bottle, but it was considered more appropriate for the palace environment. It also fits with the broader emphasis on natural products and environmental responsibility. The level of detail extended to how these cleaning solutions were applied. Staff members were trained in specific techniques for different surfaces. For example, when cleaning glass windows, the cloth had to be moved in a particular pattern to avoid leaving streaks. When wiping down marble surfaces, the pressure had to be consistent and gentle. When polishing wood furniture, the motion and the amount of solution used both mattered. These techniques were taught to new staff members and reinforced through ongoing training and supervision. Simmons emphasized that in this environment, cleaning was not simply about making things look presentable. It was about preservation. Many of the items in Buckingham Palace are centuries old. The furniture, the artwork, the architectural features, and even some of the fabrics have survived for generations because they have been cared for properly. The cleaning staff played a crucial role in this preservation effort. Their work ensured that these historic items would continue to survive for future generations to appreciate. This created an interesting dynamic where the cleaning staff had to think beyond the immediate task at hand. When dusting a piece of furniture, for example, they could not simply focus on removing the visible dust. They also had to consider whether their dusting technique might cause any wear to the wood finish over time. When cleaning a floor, they had to think about whether their chosen method might gradually dull the polish or cause microscopic damage that would accumulate over years. This long-term perspective was built into every aspect of the cleaning protocols. The emphasis on approved materials and techniques also meant that staff members had limited flexibility to solve problems in creative ways. If they encountered a particularly stubborn stain or an unusual cleaning challenge, they could not simply reach for a stronger chemical or try a different product. Instead, they had to work within the constraints of approved methods. This sometimes meant that cleaning certain areas took longer or required more effort than it might have with different tools. However, the priority was always on protecting the palace and its contents, even if that meant sacrificing some efficiency. For many of the staff members, adjusting to these rules was one of the biggest challenges of working at the palace. People who had years of experience in professional cleaning often came to Buckingham Palace with their own preferred methods and products. They had techniques that had worked well for them in hotels, private homes, or other settings, but at the palace, those preferences did not matter. Everyone had to adapt to the palace way of doing things, regardless of their previous experience or personal opinions. Simmons described how this system created a workplace culture focused entirely on precision and protocol. Every action had a correct way of being performed, and deviation from that correct way was not acceptable. Staff members learned to check and recheck their work, to pay attention to the smallest details, and to take pride in following the established procedures perfectly. Over time, these habits became ingrained, and the approved methods became second nature. The rules about cleaning products and techniques also served another purpose. They created consistency across the palace. With hundreds of rooms and multiple staff members working on different schedules, consistency was essential. If different staff members used different products or techniques, the results would vary from room to room. By standardizing the methods and materials, the palace ensured that every room met the same high standard, regardless of which specific staff member had cleaned it. However, this level of standardization and control came with a cost. For the staff members, it meant working in an environment where individual judgment was often secondary to following rules. It meant that even when they could see a potentially better way to do something, they had to stick with the approved method. It meant accepting that efficiency was less important than protocol. For some people, this was a challenging adjustment that required significant mental adaptation. The work was not just physically demanding, it also required a particular mindset and a willingness to prioritize tradition and preservation above personal preference or convenience. When most people think about working at Buckingham Palace, they imagine it must be a dream job. After all, how many people can say they spend their days walking through historic halls, surrounded by priceless art and centuries of royal history? The prestige alone would seem to make it worthwhile. To outsiders, the opportunity to work in such an iconic building, to be part of the royal household, and to contribute to maintaining British heritage might appear to be the opportunity of a lifetime. But according to those who have actually worked there, the reality is far more complex and demanding than anyone on the outside might imagine. The daily experience of working at Buckingham Palace involves pressures that are not immediately obvious to visitors or to the general public. Every task, no matter how routine it might seem, carries significant weight. The staff members are not simply cleaning rooms or maintaining a building. They are preserving a symbol of the British monarchy, caring for irreplaceable historic items, and ensuring that one of the world's most photographed buildings continues to meet impossibly high standards. This awareness shapes every moment of every workday. Anne Simmons described the palace as more than just a workplace. In her account, it was almost like a living museum where nothing could be taken for granted. Every piece of furniture had history behind it. Every room had been used for significant events. Every surface needed to reflect the care and attention that such a building deserved. This meant that even the most basic cleaning tasks required a level of focus and attention that would be unnecessary in most other settings. Dusting a table was not just about removing dust. It was about doing so in a way that would not harm the wood finish or disturb any items that might be resting on that table. The mental pressure of working in such an environment cannot be overstated. Staff members were constantly aware that their work might be evaluated at any moment. A member of the royal family could walk through a room they had just finished cleaning. A visiting dignitary might notice if something was not quite perfect. Even fellow staff members, particularly those in supervisory positions, were watching to ensure that standards were being maintained. This created an atmosphere where relaxation was nearly impossible. Every action had to be deliberate and correct. Beyond the daily cleaning tasks and maintenance work, there were also broader expectations about behavior and professionalism. Staff members were representing the royal household, and this responsibility extended beyond their specific job duties. They were expected to conduct themselves appropriately at all times, to maintain discretion about what they saw and heard, and to uphold the reputation of Buckingham Palace in everything they did. For some employees, this constant awareness became exhausting over time. The palace environment was not without its controversies, however. In recent years, several incidents have brought attention to the pressures and challenges that exist behind those famous walls. One particularly notable controversy involved Lady Susan Hussey, who had served the royal household for decades. At 83 years old, Lady Hussey was one of the longest-serving members of the royal staff, having worked closely with Queen Elizabeth for many years. Her reputation within the household was that of a trusted and dedicated servant of the crown. However, in late 2022, Lady Hussey became the centre of a controversy that quickly attracted international attention. During a reception at Buckingham Palace, an event that was meant to highlight organisations working to combat violence against women, Lady Hussey had an encounter with Ngozi Fulani, who runs an organisation called Sister Space. According to Fulani, Lady Hussey repeatedly questioned her about where she was really from, asking about her background in a manner that Fulani found intrusive and inappropriate. The questioning appeared to focus on Fulani's heritage rather than her work or the purpose of the event. When details of this encounter became public, the response was swift. Lady Hussey issued an apology and immediately stepped down from her honorary position within the royal household. Buckingham Palace also released a statement condemning the behaviour and making clear that such conduct would not be tolerated. The incident sparked broader conversations about diversity, inclusion, and unconscious bias within institutions that have traditionally been very white and very elite. Prince William, who is Lady Hussey's godson, also addressed the situation through a spokesperson. He described the incident as really disappointing and emphasised that racism has no place in society. His response was seen as an attempt to distance himself from the controversy while also acknowledging the seriousness of what had occurred. The fact that this happened at an event meant to honour organisations supporting vulnerable women added an ironic and troubling dimension to the situation. The Hussey controversy demonstrated that even long-time staff members with decades of service were not immune to accountability. It also showed how the palace was trying to navigate between its historic traditions and modern expectations around social awareness and equality. The incident received extensive media coverage and prompted discussions about whether institutions like Buckingham Palace could truly adapt to contemporary values while maintaining their connection to centuries of tradition. But the Lady Hussey incident was not the only time palace staff made headlines for problematic behaviour. In December, another incident occurred that exposed the intense pressures faced by those working in the royal household. According to media reports, approximately 50 members of palace staff attended a Christmas gathering at a bar called All Bar One in London. The evening started at Buckingham Palace itself, where employees had gathered for pre-event drinks. This was meant to be a chance for staff to relax and socialise after what had presumably been a demanding year of work. What began as a festive celebration, however, quickly deteriorated. Reports indicated that a young housemaid, just 24 years old, became involved in an altercation at the bar. According to accounts published in The Sun newspaper, the woman allegedly threw a punch at the bar manager, smashed glasses, and caused enough disruption that police were called to the scene. The Metropolitan Police confirmed that officers responded to reports of a customer causing property damage and attempting to assault a staff member at a bar on Victoria Street on December the 10th. The woman was arrested on suspicion of common assault, criminal damage, and being drunk and disorderly. She was held in custody and released the following evening after receiving a penalty notice for disorder. The incident was particularly notable because it involved staff from one of the world's most prestigious households behaving in a way that was completely at odds with the image of professionalism and restraint that the palace represents. Buckingham Palace responded to the incident with a carefully worded statement. A spokesperson clarified that the gathering was not an official palace Christmas party, but rather an informal event involving household staff who had attended an early evening reception at the palace. The statement went on to say that the facts would be fully investigated and that a robust disciplinary process would be followed, with appropriate action taken regarding individual staff members. The palace was clearly trying to balance acknowledgement of the incident with a message that such behaviour would be dealt with seriously. This Christmas party incident offered a revealing glimpse into the human side of palace employment. It demonstrated that even in an environment defined by strict rules and high expectations, the people who work there are still individuals with their own struggles and breaking points. The fact that a young staff member would engage in such behaviour after a work event suggested that the pressures of palace life might have been taking a toll. Whether the incident was related to work stress, personal issues, or simply poor judgment at the moment remains unclear. But it served as a reminder that the staff at Buckingham Palace are not immune to the kinds of problems that can affect anyone working in a high-pressure environment. The incident also raised questions about the support systems available to palace staff. Working in such a demanding environment with constant scrutiny and little room for error could presumably take a significant mental and emotional toll. Were staff members receiving adequate support? Did they have outlets for stress? Were there resources available to help them cope with the unique pressures of royal employment? These questions were not definitively answered, but the incident brought them into focus. For the general public, these controversies provided rare glimpses behind the carefully maintained facade of Buckingham Palace. Most people only ever see the building from the outside or perhaps on carefully managed tours that show selected rooms in their best light. The staff who keep the palace running remain largely invisible. But when incidents like these occur, they reveal that behind the grandeur and tradition, there are real people dealing with real pressures. Some of those pressures are unique to working in such a historic and high-profile environment. Others are the same challenges that workers everywhere might face, simply amplified by the particular demands of royal service. The combination of the Lady Hussey controversy and the Christmas party incident painted a picture of an institution struggling to balance its historic identity with the realities of modern employment. Staff members were expected to uphold traditional standards while also adapting to contemporary expectations around behaviour, diversity, and professionalism. The pressure to maintain the palace's reputation while also managing personal challenges and human imperfections created situations where mistakes could and did happen. These incidents showed that even in a place as controlled and carefully managed as Buckingham Palace, human nature could not be completely suppressed or regulated. The question remained whether the palace environment itself, with its intense demands and constant scrutiny, might actually contribute to the stress that occasionally manifested in these very public ways. The structure and organisation of life inside Buckingham Palace extended far beyond cleaning protocols and professional expectations. According to Darren McGrady, who served as a chef to Queen Elizabeth for many years, the palace operated like a completely self-contained village with its own rules, hierarchies, and social systems. The level of control over daily life was something that most people working in ordinary jobs would find difficult to comprehend. It was not simply about showing up for work, completing tasks, and going home. For many staff members, particularly those who lived on the palace grounds, work and personal life blended together in ways that left little room for privacy or autonomy. McGrady described how male and female employees were housed in completely separate wings of the palace. This separation was not merely a matter of convenience or space allocation. It was a deliberate organizational choice that reflected the palace's approach to maintaining order and discipline. The residential areas were further divided by role and rank. Housemaids lived on certain floors, footmen on others, and kitchen staff in yet another section. Each group had its designated space, and crossing into areas meant for other staff categories without explicit permission was strictly forbidden. This rigid segregation served multiple purposes. It helped maintain order in a building that housed dozens of employees at any given time. It reinforced the hierarchy that governed all palace operations, making clear that different roles came with different privileges and different spaces. It also limited the opportunities for staff members to socialize across departments or ranks, which presumably helped maintain professional boundaries and reduce the likelihood of conflicts or distractions from work duties. For the people living under these conditions, the experience could be quite isolating. Staff members were surrounded by colleagues, yet their interactions were carefully controlled and limited. The sense of always being watched, always needing to follow rules, and always being aware of boundaries extended into what should have been personal time. Even in their own living quarters, staff members remained part of the palace system. They could not simply relax and behave as they might in their own homes. The expectations of professionalism and proper conduct continued around the clock. McGrady also emphasized that these arrangements were not negotiable. New staff members quickly learned that the palace operated according to its own logic, and individual preferences or objections were not relevant. If someone wanted to work at Buckingham Palace, they had to accept the entire package, including living arrangements that might feel restrictive or outdated. The alternative was simply not to work there at all. This take-it-or-leave-it approach reflected the palace's confidence that there would always be people willing to accept these conditions for the opportunity to serve the royal household. The consequences for breaking these residential rules could be severe. McGrady indicated that even minor infractions, such as being found in an unauthorized area or violating curfew rules, could result in disciplinary action. More serious breaches could lead to dismissal. The palace took its rules seriously, and staff members who could not or would not follow them did not last long. This created an environment where compliance became automatic, where questioning rules was unthinkable, and where the individual learned to subordinate their own needs and preferences to the requirements of the institution. The psychological impact of living and working in such a controlled environment should not be underestimated. Staff members never fully escaped from their work identity. They could not come home at the end of the day and leave work behind, because they were already home and that home was part of the workplace. The boundaries between professional and personal life became blurred to the point of being almost non-existent. This constant immersion in the palace environment, with its rules and expectations, could be mentally and emotionally exhausting over time. For those working in specialized roles, such as the royal kitchen, the pressures took on additional dimensions. McGrady provided detailed accounts of what it was like to prepare meals for the Queen, and his descriptions revealed an environment where perfection was the only acceptable standard. Every ingredient had to meet specific criteria. Produce was often sourced from royal estates like Balmoral, and chefs were expected to showcase these ingredients in ways that highlighted their quality and freshness. The connection between the food and the royal estates was not just about taste. It represented the Queen's relationship with her properties and her appreciation for British agriculture. Certain ingredients were completely banned from royal meals. Garlic, for example, was never used in dishes prepared for the Queen. This was not a matter of allergy or health concern. It was simply a preference, and that preference had to be respected absolutely. Chefs who might have trained in cuisines where garlic was essential had to completely adjust their approach when cooking for the royal household. Personal creativity and culinary experimentation were not valued in this context. What mattered was adherence to established preferences and traditions. The presentation of each dish was scrutinized with the same intensity as its taste. Plates had to be arranged beautifully with careful attention to color, balance, and visual appeal. A dish that tasted perfect but looked sloppy would be considered a failure. Chefs learned that they were not just feeding people, they were creating an experience that reflected the dignity and standards of the monarchy. Every meal, even relatively simple ones, had to meet these elevated expectations. McGrady emphasized that working in the royal kitchen required a particular mindset. Chefs had to be willing to suppress their own ideas and preferences in favor of what the palace required. They had to accept that innovation was not welcome, that tradition guided every decision, and that the Queen's preferences, no matter how specific or unusual they might seem, were absolute. For people who had trained in prestigious culinaries, schools or worked in innovative restaurants, this adjustment could be particularly challenging. The royal kitchen was not a place for showcasing cutting-edge techniques or experimenting with new flavor combinations. It was a place for executing established dishes with absolute consistency and precision. The intense focus on following rules and meeting exacting standards created an environment where mistakes felt catastrophic. A chef who accidentally included a forbidden ingredient, a maid who damaged a historic piece of furniture, or any staff member who violated palace protocols faced not just professional consequences, but also a sense of personal failure. The pressure to be perfect every single day, with no room for bad days or momentary lapses in concentration, took a toll on many employees over time. Against this backdrop of demanding work conditions and intense pressure, the financial compensation offered to palace staff became a topic of controversy. A job advertisement that appeared in recent years revealed pay rates that many observers found shockingly low. The position advertised was for a live-in housekeeper, and the hourly rate listed was £7.97. For comparison, the national minimum wage for adults over 22 at that time was higher. The annual salary offered was £19,900, which included accommodation and meals as part of the package. The advertisement sparked immediate criticism from labour unions and employment advocates. Critics pointed out that while the palace might argue that room and board added value to the compensation package, the base pay rate remained well below what many people would consider fair for such demanding work. Legally, employers are allowed to make deductions for accommodation when calculating minimum wage compliance, and the palace appeared to be operating within these legal parameters. However, the optics were problematic. Here was one of the wealthiest institutions in the United Kingdom, residing in a building worth hundreds of millions of pounds, offering wages that many described as inadequate. Buckingham Palace responded to the criticism by stating that the published hourly rate was misleading when taken out of context. The palace emphasised that when accommodation, meals and pension contributions were factored in, the total compensation package was competitive with similar live-in positions across London. Palace representatives also noted that staff received additional benefits, though specific details about these benefits were not always made clear. However, critics argued that even with these additional considerations, the pay did not adequately reflect the skill, dedication and pressure required to work at Buckingham Palace. The staff were not simply performing routine housekeeping or cooking duties. They were maintaining a historic building, caring for irreplaceable items, and working in an environment where the expectations were far higher than those found in typical domestic service positions. The modest pay seemed at odds with these demanding requirements. The controversy over pay highlighted a broader issue that exists in many prestigious institutions. The prestige of working in a famous place is sometimes used to justify lower compensation, with the assumption that employees should feel privileged to work there and should not expect to be paid at market rates. For Buckingham Palace specifically, the implication seemed to be that the honour of serving the royal family should be rewarded enough, with financial compensation being almost secondary. This attitude, whether explicitly stated or simply implied through pay practices, was troubling to many observers who believed that all workers deserve fair compensation regardless of where they work. For the staff themselves, the combination of high pressure, strict rules, limited personal freedom and modest pay created a situation where many eventually decided that the prestige was not worth the cost. While some people thrived in the palace environment and found satisfaction in serving the monarchy, others reached a breaking point. The intense scrutiny, the constant need for perfection, the isolation of living on palace grounds, and the feeling that their personal lives were being controlled all contributed to decisions to leave. Anne Simmons, after more than a decade of service, eventually left Buckingham Palace. While she has not explicitly detailed all of her reasons for leaving, her accounts of the work environment make clear that the job took a significant toll. The pressure was relentless, the rules were inflexible, and the demands never let up. For someone who had devoted years to maintaining the palace's standards, the decision to walk away must have been difficult, but it was also presumably necessary for her own well-being. The stories of staff leaving Buckingham Palace reveal an important truth about prestigious workplaces. The glamour and history that make these places attractive from the outside can mask serious problems on the inside. The opportunity to work in a famous building or to serve prominent people can seem appealing initially, but the daily reality of intense pressure, limited autonomy, and sometimes inadequate compensation can make these positions unsustainable over the long term. For Buckingham Palace, maintaining its image of perfection comes at a human cost, and that cost is borne by the staff members who keep the building running behind the scenes.